Imagine this for a moment. You're sitting in the Oval Office, late at night. The room is quiet. In front of you, a map of the world glows softly, and something doesn't feel right. At the very top of the map, the ice is changing. Routes are opening. Distances are shrinking. The Arctic is waking up. And right at the center of this frozen awakening sits one massive island, Greenland. When the idea of buying Greenland resurfaced in 2019, most people laughed. The media turned it into a joke. Late-night hosts had a field day. Social feeds filled with memes. It sounded absurd, but while the public laughed, the people who think in decades weren't smiling at all, because this idea didn't come out of nowhere. It never did. To understand why Greenland keeps pulling America back, you have to rewind more than a century, back to a time when buying land was how nations secured their future. In 1867, the United States purchased Alaska. Critics mocked it. They called it useless ice. Until gold was found. Until oil followed. Suddenly, what looked foolish became legendary. And after Alaska, American officials looked north again. Greenland wasn't forgotten. It was studied, mapped, quietly debated. Then the world changed. World War II ended, and a new reality set in. The next war wouldn't be fought in trenches. It wouldn't even be fought on land. It would be fought in the air. Bombers, missiles, flight paths that cut straight over the Arctic. The shortest route between enemies now crossed the pole, and Greenland sat directly underneath it. In 1946, the United States made its move. Not with headlines, not with speeches, with gold, a formal offer to Denmark, $100 million, paid entirely in gold bullion. The message was simple: this island matters. Denmark said no, firmly, politely, but America didn't leave. If it couldn't buy the land, it would secure access to it. Airfields appeared on the ice. Radars scanned the polar skies. Defense agreements locked in a permanent presence. Greenland became a silent shield, watching the north, listening for danger, buying time, decade after decade. So when the idea resurfaced generations later, it wasn't a new obsession. It was an old one, thawing, frozen in history, preserved by strategy. And now, as the ice begins to melt again, the question isn't why Greenland matters. The question is why it always has. If part one was about history, part two is about the board. Because in geopolitics, maps don't just show land, they show leverage. At first glance, Greenland looks distant, remote, almost irrelevant. But that's because most people see it on a flat map. Military planners don't. They see it on a globe. And on a globe, Greenland sits uncomfortably close to everything that matters. There's a narrow corridor in the North Atlantic that rarely makes headlines. It's called the GUK Gap. Greenland, Iceland, the United Kingdom, a natural choke point between the Arctic and the open Atlantic. If a hostile submarine leaves Arctic waters and wants to reach North America, it almost always has to pass through this gap. For NATO, this corridor is a listening post. Sensors beneath the water, aircraft in the air, satellites overhead. For decades, it has been one of the most monitored stretches of ocean on Earth. Now imagine this for a moment. Imagine if Greenland were under hostile influence. Not invaded, not occupied, just influenced. Foreign investment in ports, dual-use airfields, logistics hubs that serve civilians by day and militaries by night. Suddenly, that choke point becomes harder to control. Because you can sink a ship, you can jam a satellite, but you can't move an island. This is why militaries call Greenland an unsinkable aircraft carrier. From its ice-covered surface, radars can see farther, aircraft can respond faster, missile warning systems gain precious minutes, and in modern warfare, minutes save cities. But geography is only half the story. The real tension lies beneath the ice. As Greenland's glaciers retreat, they're exposing something far more valuable than land: rare earth minerals. These are the invisible materials that make modern technology possible. Electric vehicles, smartphones, wind turbines, precision-guided weapons, advanced radar systems. None of them work without rare earths. And right now, one country dominates that supply chain: China. China doesn't just mine rare earths, it processes them. That's the real choke point. Even when these minerals are extracted elsewhere, they often end up being refined in Chinese facilities, which means that in a crisis, supply can be slowed, restricted, or weaponized. Greenland represents one of the few places on Earth where that dependence could be broken, and Beijing knows it. Chinese firms have already positioned themselves around key Greenland mining projects, quietly, legally, strategically. But minerals aren't the only prize. The Arctic itself is becoming a highway. For centuries, it was a frozen wall. Now, it's starting to open. As ice thins, new shipping routes are emerging. Routes that cut weeks off travel between Asia and Europe. Less fuel, lower costs, faster delivery. Whoever controls the ports, the refueling stations, the rescue infrastructure, controls the flow. China calls this vision the Polar Silk Road. Russia is already charging tolls along its Arctic coast, and Greenland sits beside the exits. Here's the problem: Greenland doesn't have the infrastructure to capitalize on this yet. No major deep water ports, limited emergency services, minimal logistical capacity. Building all of that takes enormous money. And if the United States doesn't help build it, someone else will. So when outsiders hear proposals about Greenland and dismiss them as impulsive or absurd, they miss the real calculation. This isn't about ice. It's about timing. Because once the Arctic becomes truly accessible, it's already too late to secure it. And that's where this story turns from geography to people. Because the future of Greenland won't be decided by maps alone. So far, this story has sounded like a game. Maps, routes, minerals, military advantage. But Greenland is not empty, and it is not owned by history. It is home. Fewer than 60,000 people live here. Small coastal towns, colourful houses pressed against rock and ice, generations shaped by fishing, hunting, and the sea. For centuries, Greenlanders adapted to the cold. Now, they're being asked to adapt to a tension. Officially, Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, but in practice, it governs itself. It has its own parliament, its own elections, and its own long-term goal: independence. That dream comes with a dilemma. Greenland receives significant financial support from Denmark. Schools, healthcare, infrastructure. Independence requires replacing that income. And there are only a few realistic options: tourism, mining, foreign investment. Each one comes with trade-offs. Mining could unlock economic freedom. Rare earths. Uranium, critical minerals buried beneath ancient ice. But mines change landscapes. They require roads, ports, power plants, and they bring outsiders, engineers, investors, security. For some Greenlanders, this is opportunity. For others, it feels like erosion, not of ice, but of identity. Tourism offers a softer path. Cruise ships, Arctic experiences, eco-adventures. But tourism is fragile, seasonal, sensitive to global downturns, and it rarely pays enough to replace a nation's budget. That leaves foreign partners: the United States, Europe, China. Each arrives with promises: investment, jobs, development, and each carries influence, because money is never just money. It comes with expectations. This is why Greenland's leaders walk a narrow line. They welcome cooperation, but resist control. They want roads, not bases, ports, not pawns. For Washington, this creates urgency: not to conquer, not to buy, but to stay relevant. Diplomacy, aid, investment. Because influence, once lost, is almost impossible to regain in the Arctic. And here's the quiet truth behind all of this. Greenland doesn't need to choose today, but the world is choosing around it. Ice is melting. Routes are opening. Competition is accelerating. Delay itself becomes a decision. So, when people ask, why does Greenland matter? They're asking the wrong question. The real question is this: who gets to shape the future of a place that was once unreachable, but no longer is? Greenland is not the prize. It is the crossroads, and how the world treats it will say a lot about how power behaves when the ice finally lets go.